Howdy folks, welcome to the Daily Coin. My name is Rory and today is Wednesday, January the 17th, 2018, and have the very distinct honor and great pleasure of welcoming back to the show Dr. Warren Coates. And Dr. Coates is an economist specializing in monetary policy, and he was the chief of the SDR for the IMF from 1976 until 2003, at which time he retired and became and joined the board of directors of the Cayman Islands Monetary Authority. He is president of economic consulting and providing technical assistance to central banks, and is currently advising the central banks of Afghanistan for the IMF and Kazakhstan for the government of Kazakhstan. So who better to speak with about monetary policy than someone who is eyeball deep in being involved with monetary policy? And Dr. Coates, that's exactly what he brings to the table. So we're very grateful to have him on the show today. You'd sent a series of emails and comments on an article that I'd written that was actually about an article that you had written. And I just kind of wanted to get a little closer to the fire, if you will, as far as what I'm overlooking or not understanding. And
sure.
Just to set the table, it was about a hard anchor to the dollar, or basically, I guess it could apply to any currency. And
right.
What, if you would, just give us an idea of what that means, Dr. Coates.
Okay, and let me add the critical words, currency board rules, because I suspect that that's the aspect you have not understood. Let me read just 2 lines from your article you were just describing, and then I want to elaborate why I think that what you have said is wrong.
Okay.
You said, with reference to my article on the hard anchor for the dollar, not a classic gold standard, but an updated version of a gold standard that would allow for entities like the IMF, World Bank, BIS to stay involved and be part of the global banking system. And this is the critical sentence that I want to elaborate on. You say, this would allow these global banks to continue dictating monetary policy and to continue to squash our freedoms and human rights. First of all, I don't think they were doing that in the first place, but let me elaborate what currency board rules are, and my proposal is that central banks, the Federal Reserve or any other central bank, should anchor the value of its currency to something hard, like gold, although I would recommend other things, not gold. But the gold standard was an example of a hard anchor. It would anchor the currency to some hard anchor, the value of the currency to some hard anchor, and then issue that currency only in accordance with currency board rules. Currency board rules take away from the central bank any power or authority to regulate the money supply at all, directly contradicting the sentence that you wrote.
Okay.
Currency board rules, a currency board rule makes the central bank totally passive in response to whatever the market demands. So then let me just take the example of a gold standard arrangement. Again, I don't propose a gold standard, but it is a good example that we've experienced historically of a hard anchor to a currency. If the dollar has its value fixed, to use simple numbers, to 1 ounce of gold, then whenever anybody in the public wants more money and are willing to pay to buy it at that fixed price of 1 ounce of gold per dollar, the Federal Reserve would be obligated to sell whatever amount the public wanted. If the public or individual members of the public had more than they want, and the best deal is redeeming it back at the Fed would be obligated passively to take it back at the same price of 1 ounce of gold per dollar. So such a central bank has no authority whatsoever to dictate monetary policy.
Okay. I like the sound of that, because that's part of the overall problem that I see. And the group that you worked for a number of years at the IMF, I see them as being part of the overall global monetary problem that we have currently, and the dictates that some of the rules that they send down through the City of London, through the banking giants in the City of London, and through Wall Street and the central banks, these are problems that cause problems at ground zero for myself and for you and for everybody that uses currency, that uses these fiat currency systems. Or am I wrong?
Well, I don't know what you would have in mind in saying that the IMF, for example, with whom I did work for 26 years, is taking measures that would be contrary to the interests of free markets and stable money. What the IMF insists on is for a member country of the IMF to receive temporary financial assistance from the IMF. That country must take measures that address the problem the country had in having to borrow in the first place. Almost always, that problem at the macro level is that the country has gotten itself too deeply in debt, i.e., it's not managing, the government is not managing its fiscal affairs prudently. It's borrowing far too much. Now it can't afford to pay it back. The IMF will lend to such a country on a temporary basis while it corrects the underlying problem that led to such deficits, in exchange for the commitment of the country to do so, to become more fiscally prudent. Now, to my mind, that's a requirement of any person, any family, any household, any business that wants to survive over time. They have to live within their means. The same is true with countries. And so I would not see how the IMF's involvement in helping bail out countries of that sort would in any way diminish the health of our economies, our freedoms, or have any other perverse effect. It is forcing the country more gently and more gradually than the market would on its own. It's forcing the country to become fiscally responsible.
Well, the
market would force that more quickly. If there were no IMF there to lend, the country would simply go into default and suffer far more dramatic and sharper curtailments because it would no longer be able to borrow from anybody.
Right, which is exactly what should happen, because that's what should happen when someone is fiscally and monetarily irresponsible. That's what
I agree
should
with
happen.
that.
That's what should happen.
I agree with that. I agree with that ultimately and at the end of the day. But if it is possible to lend temporary help while giving the country encouragement, not just encouragement, but the requirement to make the changes in its expenditures and tax laws, et cetera, that will bring it back into balance, so that that's done in a more orderly way, fewer people will be hurt. And in the end, the economy will benefit from that. But I agree with you. At the end of the day, such countries have to become fiscally responsible one way or another.
Right.
But I think the IMF offers a better way that hurts fewer people of doing that.
Well, let's take a look at Venezuela and what's happening there. I mean, they're their
Right.
economy, the whole thing has just gone straight down the tubes. And
Right.
Maduro, this maniac that's in charge over there, he's trying to create, and this was another part of the offline conversation that you and I had, was that he's introduced this cryptocurrency called El Petro, which he is supposedly going to back by oil and diamonds and gold. And now the parliament, the Venezuelan parliament, came out last week and said, well, not so fast. This thing is unconstitutional. It's illegal. You can't do it. And he's saying, well, we're going to do it anyway. But the way that they got to this point is by being completely irresponsible with the government and the social dictates and the socialism. Like I said, the man is completely out of control. And
I completely agree.
what would you see as a solution for Venezuela? I mean, the people are suffering. They are starving to death. The electricity, they have massive problems with electricity. They have massive problems with water, and the social unrest is growing by the day. It's not reported properly or accurately in the mainstream media, if it's reported at all. And the situation has just been deteriorating over the past 3 years, and now it's reaching a point of critical mass as far as the deterioration levels. So what would you, Dr. Coates, what would you say, or what would you like to present as a type of solution? Because I don't know. I look at it and go, I don't know what the answer is.
I have not studied in detail the situation of Venezuela, so I would not want to give a lot of specifics, but I can certainly give a broad, general response. What is needed is a restoration of free markets, a restoration of constitutional rule of law, and as a part of that, the curtailment of reckless government spending that it can only finance by printing money. This cyber currency that it wants to print, and I really know nothing about it, will be as big a failure as Bitcoin, which is falling through the floor as we speak.
Right.
And no, who would take it? They can print it. Any government, any central bank can print currency, but who is going to take it? Central banks force the economy to take their currency because they give it to the government, and the government just spends it, and that creates inflation. And when it's done extensively, as it has been in Venezuela, then the inflation becomes hyperinflation.
Right.
So, and that just helps, along with many other things, to destroy the economy. So Venezuela needs to return to constitutional law and free up the economy, free up prices to seek market clearing levels and allow enterprise to reemerge and create and so on. So that's not a specific, that's just a broad-based observation of how any economy functions successfully.
Right, and free markets, which is something that here in the United States, it seems to be slipping into the past tense as far as our economy today seems to be, doesn't seem to be, it is centrally planned. It's, the privately owned Federal Reserve and the dictates that come from them as far as the quantitative easing and manipulating the bond market through the program of quantitative easing, the algorithms that drive the market higher, and now retired former president of the Dallas Federal Reserve, Richard Fisher, said, I think it was 2 years ago, that it was we front loaded the economy, and now
Right.
it has to go through a digestive period. Well, I don't think we've hit
Right.
the digestive period yet, and I'm afraid that once we do hit this quote digestive period, that it's a distinct possibility we could look like Venezuela. I don't think that it'll reach that type of chaos, but the social inequities that we have in this country through the social welfare programs, somebody's got to pay for that, and once the digestive period begins, are those going to end? What's that going to look like? Would a gold, would a hard anchor help to deter that or alleviate that? What are your thoughts on that as far as here at home, Dr. Coates?
Well, I largely agree with what you said. I certainly think reforming the Federal Reserve by imposing on it a hard anchor and currency board rules rather than the inflation target that it operates under now would be a very positive step. It would be a part of the solution of getting out of Richard Fisher's front-loaded debt disaster. I think that the recasting and lightening in some instances the regulatory burden of previous years that have been initiated this year by the Trump administration is a helpful part of the picture of getting out of the train wreck that we would otherwise run into. However, I think Trump's negative attitudes on immigration and trade will have exactly the opposite effect, and I worry about that. I worry if he actually pushes us out of NAFTA, for example, which would be very bad for us and Mexico and Canada. So there are good things going on, and there's some bad things going on. But the missing part of all of this, which hopefully Congress will address, although Trump's behavior may well cause the Republicans to lose control of Congress next year, the unaddressed element is cutting and redesigning entitlement programs to be more efficient, better targeted to the poor that really need them, and costing taxpayers less. So that's a very broad brush of a variety of areas, but I think those are the key things. I think our militarism and terribly wasteful expenditures on defense, fighting wars in dozens and dozens of countries around the world without congressional authorization is another detrimental part of the picture, and that a greater reliance on a well-trained professional diplomacy, State Department, which unfortunately Trump is gradually killing, not filling the vacancies and experienced people resigning and leaving, forcing us to rely more on military. I think that's a disaster, as big as the debt disaster.
Well, unconstitutional, never-ending war is only good for a handful of people, and unfortunately, I'm not one of them. And
I agree.
And the diplomacy disaster that it creates, and the hatred, the all-out hatred that it creates, is beginning to really take root at this point, because people around the world are sick and tired of us just coming in and carelessly bombing people that don't agree with us and that don't accept what we tell them to accept. You know, well, you're going to do it this way or be bombed into the Stone Age. I mean, Syria, Libya, Iraq, those are prime examples, and that's just three. And I agree.
I completely agree with you. Completely agree.
And as far as the State Department and the diplomacy, that was a disaster long before Trump got in. And NAFTA, we need to get out of NAFTA. We should have never gotten into it. And I agree wholeheartedly with Trump when he said that that's one of the worst pieces of legislation that's ever been signed, one of the worst trade deals ever created. I couldn't agree with him more. I'm not a fan of Trump. I want to make that, I see him as a Trojan horse for which I've written about since November 13th of 2017 or of 2016 since he was elected. And so I'm not agreeing. I'm not saying that he is some type of savior, but I am looking at the reality of the fact that the manufacturing base in the United States has been completely gutted and no longer exists to the level that it once was. And it really started when China joined the WTO, the World Trade Organization, and as Ross Perot said during the election when he was running, that sucking sound or is the sound of American jobs leaving America. Well, that's come true. They're all the really good hardcore manufacturing jobs are gone, and Trump has said, "I'm going to bring the jobs back." No, he's not. They're not coming back. If they do come back, they will be in the form of AI or robotics. Manufacturing is dying, or it's morphing into automated, robotic, or AI, or some type of 3D. I can go and buy a 3D printer and manufacture whatever I want to manufacture, including human body parts. So that whole scenario is false. So
let's correct some of the data. Manufacturing output in the United States is as great as it has ever been. There's been no decline in manufacturing output. There's been decline in manufacturing.
Hold on. Now, how can you say that when?
Well, let me finish.
We don't even make crayons. We don't even make crayons anymore.
I'm not sure whether I'm not sure whether we should be making crayons or not. But agricultural output is the greatest it has ever been. Manufacturing employment is way down because manufacturing workers have become much more productive than they were before, so fewer people can produce more than they used to. So it takes fewer people to produce the same amount that we used to. Well, that's definitely good for the economy. It's good for you and me. It's good for our standard of living. It's what makes us wealthier, the fact that each worker is more productive. So if we want to stay in the Stone Age and have blacksmiths instead of automobiles and so on, we can do that to the detriment of our standard of living. Our economy is fully employed right up to the limit. There's no slack. Employers are having trouble filling positions that they have. So,
But what about the 95 million people that are not part of the labor force that are no longer counted, but they just don't. They're no longer part of the statistics, but they are very
they're not
real.
Looking for work.
Well, if they're not looking for work, it's 95 million people. There's only 320 million people in the country. So, that's a fairly substantial number.
About half of those who are not looking for work are people like me who have retired. The increase in retirees has gone up a great deal in the last couple of years. This is the baby boomers, retiring out of the labor force, expecting those who continue to work to feed us. That's a part of the problem. The other is, it's not. It's a part of the reality. The other part is that we have not done a very good job. We have not done as good a job as we need to adapt the training of workers to the new better, superior, more productive technologies that are coming along. We don't want to stop progress, but we do want to help people whose lifelong skills are no longer needed because there are new, better ways of doing things. We need to help those people acquire the newer skills that they need. So, I'm not saying there are no problems out there. There are problems, but the solution to those problems is not to stop progress.
But
it's to help people adjust to new jobs, new realities.
I agree that the education and the training of people it's abysmal at this point. And as far as people being able to re-educate themselves or get trained into new skills and be able to perform new tasks, you stated a moment ago that that companies were having a hard time filling positions. Well,
right.
Why don't they train them? Why don't they hire someone who has a different set of skills, but shows promise as as a solid employee, as a solid human resource for their company? Why wouldn't they hire that person and train them to do the new task? So I'm not sure that I agree with the full employment and people having a hard time finding workers. I don't think there's any. I don't think that there are people that want to work. I don't think that. And you stated also that half of the 95 million are baby boomers, so that still leaves 47 million plus people out there that are not being counted in the labor force, that are still causing problems. If you just take the 47 million, that's 1 in 6 or 1 in 7 Americans that's not working. That's 1 in 7 Americans, not people of working age. That's everybody, man, woman, and child. So that's once again the nonsense of the 4.5 or whatever the Bureau of Labor Statistics is touting this month as being the unemployment rate. I don't believe that for a minute, because they don't take into account the 95 million people that are not part of the labor participation, that have fallen out of that. So, and by your own numbers of 47 million, if you add those back into it, we're not looking at 5% unemployment. We're looking at more like 15% unemployment, if not higher. So some of these things just don't add up to what I'm being told and what I actually see outside of my window. I mean, it's, and I'm not harping on you, Dr. Coates. I'm just trying to. I want our world to function properly. I would love to see us return to some type of gold standard that worked from 1492 all the way up to 1873. Functioned beautifully, worked perfectly, no problems. There were some problems, of course, but not like what we have today, where you've got Federal Reserve people coming out saying, "Yeah, we front-loaded that," and then Ben Bernanke at Milton Friedman's birthday 20 years ago saying, "Yeah, we created the Great Depression. We did that. Sorry, we won't do that again." I just I'm not feeling the love, Dr. Coates, from these people that are manipulating, rigging, stealing, just taking. They just do everything that they can to our economy, which directly impacts me as a citizen and as a human being. That's why I said that they steal our human rights. Because that's where it begins and ends.
Well, let me make two observations here. One, we are both agreed that it would be a move in the right direction to take this power away from the Federal Reserve and discipline them with a hard anchor and a currency board rule, back to a gold standard like sort of system, or closer to that we had before. The bigger problem is not with our economy, is not monetary policy. It's far from perfect. It causes problems, but the bigger problem is Congress. It's the government that keeps appropriating money for this favored group or that favored group, and then trying to find money to pay for it, which we have to either pay in taxes or debt. That's where the bigger problem is, and I worry much more about getting that right. Let me also address NAFTA and trade. In my view, our economy flourishes best and most when we are each free to produce what we want, sell what we want, buy what we want, and where we want. That's what free trade means. That's what a free market is and means, and that's what NAFTA moved us closer to. It was very beneficial. It also diminished pressure from Mexico for Mexicans to find better opportunities in the U.S. because they were finding better and better opportunities in Mexico. So NAFTA was win-win. It was good all around for everybody, and I object to the government interfering in my right to trade anywhere I want, to buy or sell what I produce wherever I want. And that's what trade restrictions do, and I'm absolutely against them.
Yeah, I am too. I want government out of my life at every level, at every turn. You know, I just want to. I'm not hurting anybody. I'm not doing anything wrong. I just want to live my life and be as free as possible and do the right thing. And like you said, creating commerce, honest commerce, it levels the playing field. Period.
Right.
But it's not. But we don't have that. We don't have hardware stores on every corner. We have Home Depot, 3 in every city, and they dictate what hardware we get and what hardware cost. We don't have Joe's Plumbing Company. We just have these conglomerates that all own everything, that have killed. And we have Walmart. Killed the neighborhood grocery store. So we don't have any of the things that we had when you and I were growing up. None of it. It's all gone. And that's part of that came from these trade agreements.
It's not gone where I live. I live in Maryland, and we've got lots of stores around, hardware, grocery, drugstores, whatever. I actually prefer, it's much to my taste and advantage to do most of my shopping online and have it delivered to the door. But that's, to me, that enhances my standard of living. But we still have lots of these stores around, and as long as they are able to deliver a service that people prefer and are willing to pay for, they'll continue to exist
if they're given the opportunity. That's my point. Is that the opportunities have been taken away
because of excessive government regulation.
Correct.
But it hasn't taken away these smaller stores. They're all over the place. But I agree, government regulation has been too intrusive, too costly, etc., and stifled innovation, stifled new entrants into the marketplace, and I'm glad to see some of those being rolled back.
Well, we can only hope that Trump continues down that path and taking away 2 for each new regulation, which I'm very grateful for that. He needs to up it to like 10 to 1. Eliminate 10 for every one that comes on. Then that might make a dent in the situation.
Well, I'd be satisfied with 2 for 1, but I'm glad to see that direction. But I'm not happy. I'm not happy to see my freedom to trade being challenged and interfered with by Trump.
Well, I'm not. Well, once again, it's not. I don't see that he is the cause of the overall problems. He may be helping them or assisting them, but he didn't create it, and that that's the way that I see it. But Dr. Coates, I'm not going to take up any more of your time, and I really appreciate all the time and the wisdom that you've given, and I'm glad to hear that you and I are a lot closer in our thoughts, or at least I see it that way, than what I had previously believed. And
well, I think so too. I think so too.
And I hope that we can do this again, because I think that healthy debate is exactly that. It's healthy. I think that it helps people to understand, helps me to understand. Hopefully, it helps you in a little bit. I know you're a heck of a lot smarter about all this than I ever will be, but we do what we do. and once again, tell the people, Dr. Coates, where they can find some of your work and what you're doing. Tell us what you got going on.
Well, the best way would be to consult my blog. From my emails to you at the bottom, there are several website addresses, and virtually all my material can be found there.
Okay.
That's probably the easiest way of telling you, rather than trying to spell out the addresses.
All right, and I'll include all the links to all of your work and not only in the video but in the description below the video. And Dr. Coates, I wish you a really awesome 2018, and let's go get some central bankers.
Well, thank you, and let's wish everybody a prosperous 2018.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.